This is Trend Following Radio, where great thinking comes alive. Nobel Prize winners, legendary traders, best-selling authors, and the pros that know what drive us irrational human beings. I am your host, Michael Covel. Not filtered, raw, honest. That's my passion. Today on the podcast, I have Ryan Holiday. Ryan has appeared on my podcast before. I always enjoy his appearances. Today, his new book, The Obstacle is the Way. What a great title. Direct, head on. The stuff that you don't want to do, the stuff that feels bad, the impediment in front of you, that's where you should be concentrating. Go straight into the heart of the problem, the heart of the impediment. That's where you want to be. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Hey, Mr. Holiday, how are you?
I'm doing excellent. How are you?
Not too bad. I assume I'm reaching you in Austin?
You are.
Cool. How is Austin these days? I've not been for a while. I love Austin.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's a little slow, but I like it for that reason.
Less distraction.
For sure.
Hey, listen, let's jump right in. So as I'm preparing to talk to you today, and you've got a new work out, The Obstacle is the Way. And I'm thinking as I'm digging into this, I'm expecting pink unicorns. I'm expecting perhaps a Google implanted device in some orifice of my body. I'm not expecting Mr. Holiday to go back 2,000 years and be starting with, Hannibal Lecter giving advice to Clarice Starling. So how did you, with that setup, and of course I say that in jest, and I'm very, very excited because I think you hit the money going back to Marcus Aurelius. How and why did this philosopher, this man from all these years ago, he's clearly got a hold of you? Yeah,
for sure. I mean, I think it's, for one, Marcus Aurelius and the Meditations, which I base this book on, is a sort of totally unique historical document, which is, you've got essentially the most powerful man on earth, literally a god while he's alive, sitting down every night and writing this book that is essentially a series of admonishments to help him or to remind him to be a better person, to be more generous, to be more kind, to be more thoughtful, to be more disciplined, to sort of do his job well, to be just, to be honest. He's sort of sitting down and writing this series of moral reminders and exercises for, accomplishing that to himself. And then that document, gets out after his death, and we have it today. And so, one, I think it's this fascinating peek into a side of people in the world that we don't have. And then stoicism, which is what Marcus was practicing when he wrote it. If you track it through history, it tends to spike and find relevance again or be rediscovered during difficult times. So, Marcus was writing it during the decline and fall of the Roman Empire. You see it again during the Renaissance. You see it during the Enlightenment. You see it during the Civil War. You see it during the American Revolution. You saw it during Vietnam. You see it through difficult times. That's when it tends to be rediscovered. You saw it during World War II. And so I thought that its relevance today we're in one of those places, and it's that plus the fact that everything that he's writing and what I tried to talk about in the book, I also think is sort of timeless and perennially valuable to people who are trying to do difficult things and balance, conflicting forces inside themselves.
As we talk about distraction in the beginning of this conversation, and you go into this in your work and how one of the techniques you use to avoid distraction. But I joke about the idea of Google and some device. And I think there really is, and I want you to expand on this, but the classics, the basics, meditations, for example, we've gotten off track somewhere. We're looking for a shortcut. We're avoiding common sense. And it's been there for us to see in plain sight, but we want to go all these other directions, don't we?
Yeah, sure. I think, Marcus says this in one of the things he's actually talking, he talks about, he goes like, in the age of Trajan, which is a previous Roman emperor, he goes, people were doing the same things. They were fighting, they were starting wars, they were throwing parties, they were starting businesses, they were having arguments, they were getting married, they were getting divorced. They're doing all the same things that we're doing right now. And they struggled with the same things, and then all those people lived, and then they died, and then here we are, and the same thing's happening again, right? And so the point is, he's trying to illustrate how sort of timeless human problems and human actions are. One, so you can put them in perspective and not freak out, but I think also to illustrate that those things are never going away. And so it doesn't matter what technology Google invents, the more or less the difficulties or the problems or the issues that come from throwing a party or getting married or fighting in a war or starting a business or going out of business, those things are always going to be with us. And so you better learn how to deal with them, and you better learn how to manage them instead of hoping that they're magically going to go away. Because, if they've been here for 2 or 3 or a million years, chances are there's not a technical solution to that personal, human issue.
I'm going to go into a few examples, but let me give a big picture overview, and you can expand on this too. So the idea, people are out there, they want to make something happen, and this could be on the mental side of their life, the physical side, the emotional side, the business side, the entrepreneurial side, and their action is impeded. They're stopped. And what people, and I think this is where you try to go in your work, is they need to adapt. And I think the bigger picture point, going back to meditations, is you point out, look, this impediment to action actually advances the action. And I probably have read that somewhere, but it's such a powerful statement. The impediment to action advances the action. It literally makes an obstacle exciting.
Yeah, and look, I know it's simple, and I say in the book things can be simple, but that doesn't mean they're easy. But what I'm saying in the book is, and this is the one exercise of stoicism that the whole book is about. But it's basically, you think you want to do something, you're trying to do something, and that thing is blocked. But it's impossible for a human being to be blocked because we can just change our disposition or our intention. And so Marcus is saying the mind converts to its own purposes the obstacle to our acting, the impediment to action advances action, what stands in the way becomes the way. And what he means is that everything that happens, even if it's not what you want it to happen, is an opportunity to practice some sort of virtue, right? To practice some skill or benefit or practice that's better. So it's like, look, I'm giving this podcast and I could totally embarrass myself, or you could be a really, difficult host who's trying to hold my feet to the fire. And that could feel bad. It might feel like a calamity while it's happening. But what I really have the opportunity to do, if I think about what Marcus is saying, is it's like, okay, that's a chance for me to practice humility, or that's a chance for me to practice courage in front of adversity, or, someone who's interrogating me, or it's just a reminder that you can't please everyone all the time. So it's even though some negative thing happens, it's not negative. You decide how you want to view it. You decide the story that you tell yourself about the things that happen to you. Events are objective. Our perceptions are subjective. And so if that's true, we have the ability to tell ourselves positive stories, to see the obstacles as opportunities rather than as impediments.
Yeah, and of course, by me interviewing you today, since I agree with this perspective, I can't really rip the shit out of you today, because I kind of would be ripping the shit out of myself. So,
but you could, it's you could, you don't know. I think people, and you talk about this in your financial writings, is people have a delusional sense that they control the world around them, that it happens, that it acts rationally, and that it's more or less predictable or that it sort of behaves within some sort of boundaries or guidelines. And of course it doesn't. And so what the Stoics said, and this is also sort of what the book is based on, is like, look, the world is inherently unpredictable. We do not control what happens to us. We only control how we respond to what happens to us. And if you can let go of that and stop focusing your energy on delusions or, pretensions that you do control the world, it allows you to focus exclusively on that reaction, and you can make it a good reaction.
Yeah, like I said, it's just kind of exciting when you reframe it like this. The negative becomes the opportunity, and that's just it's an exciting thing. Here, one of the things that I think you do, we don't want to get, we obviously could, but it's not a philosophy book per se. You are taking the philosophy and using practical examples to give people something to chew on and to think about how it's moved over time. And in the last couple of weeks, somewhere along the line, I think on the tube, I saw either Oceans 11, 12, or 13, and I was saying to myself, this guy Clooney can't get any more cool on the screen. I mean, he's just absolutely impeccable. I mean, Brad Pitt is pretty dang cool there too, but Clooney just wins. And there's a nice little nugget, and we're going to go into a couple other examples, but there's a nice nugget in your book about Clooney and him making his way.
Yeah, it's funny. Like the book is mostly like presidents and leaders and soldiers and entrepreneurs who did all these cool things. But then I found that story about Clooney, which I really liked, which is, so Clooney's a struggling actor, like all actors who are starting out. And you go to these auditions and you're like, pick me. Like you just want them, you want their approval. You want them to see that all the potential that you have. And he realized, and it's something that I think we all forget about any type of job interview, or, you're trying to meet a girl or a guy at a bar or whatever. They want to find someone. Like, they're having the audition because they need to fill a role. It's not like when they were casting Ocean's 13 or any movie that Clooney's ever been in, they were like, well, you know what? Let's just pack it up and go home. We couldn't find anyone. Like, we're just not going to cast the lead role. It's just going to be an empty chair. So Clooney realizes that they have a problem and that they're looking for an actor to solve that problem. And it was this sort of perspective switch that made the audition suddenly much easier. And it allowed him to find out what triggers and sort of buttons he had to push to make it clear that he was the right thing. It's like I've hired dozens of people and I never even thought about it this way. Like, I have to hire someone. And then I go into every interview hoping that this person can convince me that they're that person. Meanwhile, they're coming into every interview thinking that they have a problem, which is that they need a job and that they hope that I'll magically solve it for them. And that if they could just take that initiative, they would find that the doors would magically open and they would get what they wanted.
It is real. It's just truly amazing to go back and just to look at the wisdom coming from Marcus all these years back. And some of it, as you mentioned, very simple. I'm looking at this one line that I jotted down. The cucumber is bitter, throw it out. I mean, there's people probably listening to us and they're saying, okay, Mike, that's great. That's a nice little trite comment. But I would make the connection, and I want you to go into this example a little bit. I think that dovetails perfectly in with Steve Jobs' reality distortion field. It's all connected.
Sure. Yeah, well, it's interesting, too, because it's like, you got to remember, again, this is not some philosopher. This is the most powerful man in the world writing this to himself. A reminder that it's like, look, if you don't like something, don't fucking stress over it. Just get rid of it, right? If a path isn't working, stop trying to go down that path. Just try a different path. And it's that simple. It's not easy because we have emotions tied to the decisions that we've made. We have rules that tell us how we're supposed to behave. We have obligations, and those are what make it difficult to do what is objective and rational. And that's what I try to focus on in the book. Yeah, and I tell lots of examples. I like the Steve Jobs one because, I think you tend to get the sense that the Stoics were pessimistic, or that philosophers were pessimistic, and that's the strategy. But what I like about Steve is he was almost like delusionally ambitious or delusionally optimistic, but he was also willing to compromise as well. So it's like Steve Jobs someone comes in and he's like, hey, I need you to build this mouse. And the guy's like, oh yeah, that's not possible. It can't be done. You're wrong. I'm sorry. It's like that guy's fired. And the next day, the new employee knows that his job is dependent on building that mouse. Or the engineers say like, hey, sorry, we need 2 weeks, before this thing can ship. It's not possible to do anything different. And Steve Jobs says, okay, well, you only have a week. So that's it. This idea of people would say he had this thing called reality distortion, and he would hear what you were saying about what is and isn't possible, and he would just sort of aim for slightly above that or even way above that. Like, when they had the idea for the iPhone, most people thought it was impossible. Not just impossible, but impossible within like the year timeline that he gave himself. And there's this amazing conversation where he sits down with one of the glass suppliers. He's like, look, I know you think you can't do this, but I know that you can. I want you to relax. I want you to assume that it is possible and sort of work from there. And of course, they do deliver it. That what Jobs was really good at was seeing the sort of artificial constraints or limitations that we put on things because we were being realistic or practical or pessimistic, or we weren't being confident enough in ourselves. And he would just sort of blow right past that and demand for and ask for more. And that's why he was able to expand the boundaries of what were possible, was because he was willing to sort of challenge that idea.
Well, it's breaking the fear apart, almost breaking it down to its component parts.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I mean because I was thinking, okay, breaking the fear down. People might say, what does that mean? Well, let's say you're a tech startup and you're ultimately competing with, quote, Microsoft. Well, and you may say, how do I compete with Microsoft? Well, I mean, I'm not a tech guy or a tech company, but I could look out there and I can say, well, you know what? Maybe their support and customer service has gotten a little weak because they're a fairly large company. Boom, there's an opportunity to break in. It's literally that kind of a breakdown, an honest, objective analysis, not just your gut level perception, but an objective accounting for what you're really seeing right now.
Sure, or you could take some solace in the fact that Microsoft doesn't know that it's competing with you, and that's where you have the opportunity. Right, is in the fact that you're competing against the giant, but yes, the giant is completely ignorant of this problem, right? And that gives you the chance to sort of work in the shadows, to work off the radar, and to sort of make the right moves and steps that put you in a position to sort of level the playing field. So it could be much worse, right? You could be competing against Microsoft, and they could be setting out to crush and destroy you, but that's probably not the situation.
Hey, what drives you? Because seriously, you could write a magical pink unicorn book that gives people all the, quote, secrets and makes all kinds of promises. But this is heavy lifting. This is how the greats have moved through success in their life. Why are you being so blunt about this? Why are you being so open about it? Why not dress it up some, gussy it up some, make it look a little nicer? Huh?
Well, one, because I think that gets you further and further away from the point. And I wanted to write like stoicism, and I was trying to sort of honor this tradition. It's not designed to be like some inspiration. It's designed to be a set of sort of practical techniques that you actually use in life. Like stoicism was a school of philosophy, but some of the most prominent Stoics were not like teachers. They were like military generals and statesmen, and they were leaders like Marcus Aurelius. So it's designed to be used. And I wanted to write a book and the people who were writing it were not just writing it for themselves or for other people. They were writing it for themselves. So I wanted to write a book that helped me too, because I'm not writing this book. It's like, hey, I've done all this. I've conquered all this. You should listen to me. I'm writing it. Look, I go through the same things as everyone else, trying to codify and collect the wisdom of other people who've gone through the same stuff over the years, into a framework and a system that can be utilized at a moment's notice, depending on your circumstances. And I want to be able to use it just as much as anyone else.
I love the one comment in there too, and not just the one comment, many comments, but will. That's our ultimate. It's the ultimate internal power. It's the trump card. And I think so many folks out there forget that they have will. Because unless you've stopped breathing, you're still going. And if you can still go, why have you stopped?
Sure. And I think, I sort of have two definitions of will in the book. There's willpower, which we know, and I don't think we utilize enough. I think people are a little soft and they give in, or they relent when they still have a little bit left in the tank. But there's also this will is this powerful sort of wisdom and force. It is our ultimate power, because we're able to sort of put things in perspective. We're able to, will is the sort of the whole package, right? It's understanding that, okay, yes, my factory burned to the ground. Yes, I've only got a few years left to live. Yes, this happened or that happened, but I get to choose whether I accept that and then decide to work, sort of work on despite it. I'm the one who decides that this is going to energize me, that I'm going to see this as a challenge. I know I've prepared for this moment, so I'm able to persevere and continue on anyway. So to me, will is this sort of, it's this power inside us that we either forget that we have or we don't utilize properly, because we think it's all about having the right opportunities, or, having the right resources or skills, or having the perfect plan, when really all those things matter. But at the end of the day, sometimes it's just sort of dogged persistence and pertinacity that matter more than anything else.
Yeah, persist and resist. As you point out, it's supposed to be hard.
Right. And it's good that it's hard, because it means everyone else is going to probably fall away at one point or another. And if you hold on, that's where you get, the gains that everyone else has. It's like a stock trader who goes long on a position, that's willing to endure, losses every day, that's willing to endure, crises of confidence, that's willing to endure skepticism and criticism from other people, because they know that every day that happens, the position becomes more and more valuable. When whatever it is that they're banking on happens, they're going to be the only one there at the finish line.
I want to get back to one practical way for people to think about this as an example. So the football coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide is Nick Saban. And I've seen some writings about how he approaches things, and you make an example with him. And I think what's so wise about how he's teaching his players, his staff, and obviously getting the university higher ups to realize the process he's going to use, it's one step at a time. It's your foot in front of you. It's not at the end of the season imagining holding up the crystal vase because you won the national championship. It's doing each step, one step at a time. And that's that moment of now, and doing the right thing right now as part of a plan. That's something that not many people are relatively exposed to.
Yeah, I think it's because, we see these startups who it's like, oh, they had this brilliant idea, and then 18 months later they sold for $1 billion. Or, this guy in a night, a fury night of coding invented this thing that changed the world, or this happened, or, someone had this flash of insight. And so we don't understand that actually, and Nick Saban isn't the only one that does this. I think all great coaches do this, but he says that winning is about the process. Winning is really about finishing. It's about finishing plays, finishing reps, finishing downs, finishing, series, finishing, film sessions. It's about it's about finishing practices. It's about finishing the immediate task in front of you and finishing it well. And then if you focus on that, someone else's job is to think a little bit bigger picture, and there's someone else above you. Like, your job is to focus exclusively on your role and doing it as well as it can ever be done, and then doing the same for the next one. And I think, a lot of times we talked about breaking things down earlier. A lot of times we find ourselves in really negative or unfortunate situations, or that's what we tell ourselves it is. And then we just don't do anything because we don't know how to get from here to there. And that's not what you should be focused on. You should be focused on making, it's like, okay, I got to get a little breathing room. So I'm going to carve out some space for myself. Now I'm going to think about a plan. Now I'm going to make that plan, and then I'm going to do step 1 of the plan, and step 2 of the plan, and step 3 of the plan, until eventually I am clear of whatever was sort of pinning me down or on top of me, rather than it's like, okay, this thing is on top of me. I'm just going to try to push it off as hard as I can and then wonder why I don't have the strength to do it. A lot of times, the way that you do great things is something that's dependent on something else. It's that's dependent on something else, and that's dependent on something else. And it's that exponential effect that ultimately allows little things to turn into big things.
When I look at what you've put together, to me, it's about feeling great about the fight, the adversity, the challenge.
Yeah.
You're in the game. And ultimately, as you talk about even how meditations came to be as a work, I can't help but think, and I'm not sure if you mentioned this in the book, but I can't help but think what you're really pushing people to think about is not necessarily how much money are you going to make in the course of a lifetime, but aren't you silently pushing people to think about their legacy?
I don't know if I'm trying to think about legacies, because look, at the end of the day, you're dead, so it doesn't matter what your legacy actually was. I'm trying to, and the Stoics talk a lot about this. It's not about what you do. It's how you get there, right? Can you be happy and content with the process, to go to what we were just talking about? Because the process is intrinsically valuable. And can you do everything that you can and should in every situation, knowing that is enough? Because again, we control our actions and our intentions, but we don't control the results of those actions. That's all we control. And so if you're tied up thinking about your legacy, you're going to have problems, because you don't control what other people think about you. There's so many people that have done amazing things that weren't appreciated in their time, or even hated in their time. And so what you've got to be content with is what you're doing and why you're doing it. And then the reactions of other people you're either indifferent to, or are, sort of a nice bonus if they happen, but you're not doing it for them, because you're going to be really disappointed. Like, I have to be content with this book and know that it's good. The reviews have to be, irrelevant to me, because if I was writing them for the reviews, I'm setting myself up to be in a position where a bunch of other people who don't know me and I don't know them have a power over me to determine whether I did a good job or not. And that's not a great position to be in.
And see, that'd be a great example, as we were talking in the beginning, of taking a challenge, turning it around to the advantage. And ultimately, what I really am talking about there too is the personal legacy. You're doing the best that you can in the course of your lifetime. And of course, none of us can control how we're perceived. That's just not in our control. But I think, as you correctly point out in the book, though, get in the game. Try. Yeah. Make something happen. You've only got one shot. There's no guarantee the time clock is going to keep ticking. So get out there and get bloody.
Totally. Don't wait around don't wait for the water to calm down, or for everything to, become the perfect situation that you were hoping for, because it's probably not going to happen. And you don't have the luxury of an unlimited time frame to sort of wait it out. You got to jump in. It's not always going to be easy, but it's not supposed to be easy, and it's kind of good that it's not.
Hey, one last question. Who turned you on to meditations?
It's a very weird, unusual story, but it was actually Dr. Drew, the HLN host, the Loveline host. I met him at a conference many, many years ago, and I asked him, like I always do, I ask smart people what books they're reading, and he told me about this book, and I read it, and the rest is history.
Awesome. The book is out on May 1st. And obviously they can go to, is it RyanHoliday.net? You couldn't buy the Russian guy that's got the .com? What's going on?
I don't know.
I don't know if a Russian guy has it or not.
It's something. I forget what it is. But it's RyanHoliday.net. The book's on Amazon, bookstores everywhere. And I hope everyone enjoys it.
Cool. Hey, Ryan, it's always good chatting. And, it's amazing. The reason I love having you on, and there might be some people listening in my world, and they say, well, then Mike, what's the connection with Ryan? The reality is, in the investing trading world, the topics that you're discussing, it's Psych 101. It's trading Psych 101. If one doesn't have these principles down, you could have all the trading and investing strategies in the world. You're going to fail.
Yep.
And so to me, that's I love these conversations for that simple reason. So anyways, hey, I appreciate it. I wait for the next bit of research to get me excited.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for having me. It's always good to talk.
Take care, Ryan. I see a time when those awake will understand how to make money in up, down, and surprise markets. Whether new trader or experienced, college student or financial advisor, protecting against a crash or just trying to make a lot of money, trend following offers everyone an answer in uncertain times. To get started immediately, send me an email, michael@covel.com. I will send you the right trend following steps to take along with my free video. But if you want to buy and hold, trust the government and trust Wall Street, this is absolutely not for you.